The first reveal of No Man's Sky brought a tear to the eyes of gamers everywhere. From day one, they painted a picture of infinite discovery in a vast unexplored universe. And all of it would have been unique. All of it procedurally generated on the fly, so that out of 18 quintillion planets, no two planets would ever be the same. That on its own sounded like a pretty awesome feat, but on top of that, everything they showed looked beautiful and handcrafted, like it wasn't made by a math equation at all. They showed us images of glorious adventures amongst the stars. Swashbuckling, discovery, adventure, trading, anything you can put your mind to. It would all be possible in No Man's Sky. The entire universe is your oyster. They showed this game off as the space game to end all space games. But is that truly what we got? This launch was met with a ton of controversy, some people thinking it's the worst game ever made, some people thinking it's exactly what was promised to us, maybe just a little bit less dramatic. I kinda lie somewhere in between. It's a far cry from what we were promised, but what remains is moderately fun. The game starts out wonderfully. You'll typically start out on a fairly mild planet, no grand dinosaurs or anything like that for you to discover, but still some pretty interesting things. It gives you the impression that the more you explore, the more grand things you'll discover. But the further you go, the more you realize that really just isn't the case. While it's true that no two planets are exactly the same, everything will start to look familiar as you go forward. The game also starts out with this grand mystery with the Atlas, offering to guide you to some kind of enlightenment at the center of the galaxy. But you'll find yourself going nowhere trying to unravel that mystery most of the time, only to find that, without spoiling anything, the conclusion to that mystery is kinda unsatisfying. But enough with the overview, let's talk about why this game isn't as good as it could have been. Despite the game's many flaws, the foundation on which it's built is amazing. The system used for procedurally generating planets, as one example, is truly a marvel of video game technology. Seeing more of that kind of thing in the future is something I really look forward to. It keeps new things coming so that you're not just sitting there after you beat the game waiting for new content to come out. So that instead of focusing on making more content, the developers are actually focused on improving the game. We'll see, however, if that applies to this case. Another bonus of this procedural generation system is how seamless it is going to and from different planets. Like literally, you see a planet up in the sky, you take off, you leave the atmosphere, you go to that planet, you land, no loading screens. It's all just generated there once you arrive. It's a seamless system, the flow of gameplay never breaks, and that is great. While there are many flaws with these two systems, as I'll get into later, the very core mechanics of languages and other intelligent species is one of the things I found about the game to be really clever. Basically, you have these three different factions of intelligent life spread all throughout the universe, and they all speak their own language. And you gotta learn their languages word by word as you explore. And the more words you learn, obviously, the better you'll be able to understand what they're trying to say. The more easily you understand them, the more easily you can find out what they expect from you, so that you'll be able to raise your standing with them. And secondly, the system for discovering new species of plants and animals, cataloging them, naming them, and then hoping someone someday will end up on the same planet as you were and discover the same species, see the same things you've seen, and probably get mauled by the elusive motherfucker. But one of the best things about No Man's Sky, hands down, is the audiovisual experience. Not only is it the colors and the sights to be found on every unique planet, but also the soundtrack, which I hear even that is procedurally generated. And honestly, you can hardly tell. But it all goes back to what I said before about how it's just the foundation that's really good. And that'll keep you entertained for maybe the first few planets. But then all the problems start cropping up and you'll start to realize that the game gets boring really quickly. First, let's start with the things that sully the good things about the game. Working backwards from what we just started with, the discovery system, while at its core is interesting, is really kind of boring compared to what we saw in some of the demos they showed. and lacks a lot of features that would have made it really helpful, like an upload all button for example. And the interface can often be misleading, telling you that you've discovered 100% of everything there is to discover on a planet, when in truth you've only just filled up that page, so you have no real way of knowing how much more stuff is on the planet. And while I understand that trailers are meant to make the game look good, there is such a huge difference between what we see in the trailers and what we ended up getting. Where's our bustling galactic trade routes? Where's our epic crashed freighters? Our sand planets with giant deadly sandworms? Our epic clashes between two warring factions? Small insects floating around, giant dinosaurs hanging out in the shallow water, atmospheric alien rainforests, the massive fucking flying land masses, stampeding herds and jagged mountains, bioluminescent life, eerie solar and lunar eclipses, epic spiraling rock formations, long-lost alien civilizations, gigantic flying skyworms. And that's just the visual things that were excluded from previous builds. And before I digress too far into that topic, what was that I said earlier about the aliens and the language system being flawed? Well, for one, you never find the fuckers outside their designated spots. They've taken both the life and the intelligence out of intelligent life. And what about the language system? Well, no matter how many words you learn, you never know what the fuck they're saying. You could spend a week in one faction's space just dedicated to learning their language and still not know what the fuck they're saying. And then God forbid your next jump takes you to another faction's space, and then everything you learned previously means nothing there. And all the procedural generation systems don't seem to work as heavily on alien-made creations, such as ships, space stations, the economy, even the aliens themselves. Next, the whole journey milestone thing is really intrusive. It lasts a really long time and it halts your progress in the game entirely until it's finished telling you what you've just accomplished. To be clear though, there's nothing wrong with the milestone system, it's just that notification that's really annoying. They really should have, I don't know, gotten rid of the letterbox, moved the notification a little higher up on the screen so it's not directly in the center, maybe change the opacity, and definitely allow us to interact with shit while it's happening. Well, can I go to my inventory now? I would love it if it wouldn't completely block my screen with all this shit for walking. Yeah, not to mention sometimes it does that for the stupidest things. And now I don't know how the console versions are, but the PC version is plagued with performance issues. Even on lower settings you'll get frame rate issues in thick forests, freezes, crashes, and what I'm showing on screen is this time my game just randomly decided to take a shit and all of a sudden all the frame rates, no matter what was shown on screen, just dropped to like fucking 2 frames a minute. And since the game doesn't save on exiting, I had to actually wait until I got to a restore point before I could restart my game to fix it. And now it's time to continue that montage of everything they took out of the game from previous builds. AI wingmen, landing the ship in water and using it as a submarine, epic in-atmosphere ship battles, mysterious portals that take you to different planets, underwater alien structures.
We'll do a Fahrenheit version for you guys. So the game and the planets are full of these kind of little mysteries, right? Caves, like huge cave networks, and they go on like for kilometers. If you hang around and it gets to night, some predators come out. Buildings have interiors, they're procedural, and this is a Korvax ship, and they're a scientific race. So this ship is kind of more scientific. I've got to shoot the ground and he'll get scared.
He's gonna get scared.
You can like combine elements and that will create like new alloys. Pirates walked in there and I think they're probably going to try attacking those freighters. All in the same star system.
Do we ever get to see ourselves?
No, you don't see yourself, so the only way for you to know what you look like is for somebody else to, to see you.
Can you run into other people, other players on the game?
Yes, but the chances of that are incredibly rare, just because of the size of what we're building.
And that's only the stuff that I'm aware of. You can find lists all over the internet of stuff that they have promised for No Man's Sky but not included. It almost feels like they accidentally uploaded an earlier build of the game and just don't want to admit they fucked up. Especially if all the disclaimers in those trailers are actually true. Why the hell did they take so much out of these supposedly playable builds? It's kind of like what Ubisoft did with The Division. They showed these early builds that looked fantastic and had a lot of features that didn't make it into the final build. But even The Division lasted longer for me than No Man's Sky. They have absolutely gutted so many things from No Man's Sky that I already feel like I'm done with the game, after only like a couple weeks of playing. and logging a grand total of 28 hours on Steam. Now granted, there are some games that'll last you even less time than that, but just to put that in perspective, even with all its flaws, I logged 153 hours with The Division. A game like this is supposed to last you just a little bit longer than that. Next, while I applaud the starting experience, mining resources and inventory management starting out is a huge pain in the ass. You have literally the most limited inventory space for both your exosuit and your ship starting out. Considering how many resources are required to power your ship and your life support systems and all that shit, even your multi-tool, which is used to mine resources, the game becomes less of a quest for adventure and more of a constant grind to expand your inventory and refill your resources. And even once you've expanded your inventory, that only solves one problem, and you still have to constantly grind resources, which by the way are plentiful on every planet, so it's not even difficult to survive in that regard. So no matter what you play the game for, whether it's exploration, discovery, survival, trading, battle, I guarantee you No Man's Sky will fall short of your expectations. So as always for this part, I'm going to avoid saying things like, oh, just make the AI more lively, or bring back all the scrapped content. Changes that are that simple that anybody can think of it. The type of change of which is necessary in abundance for No Man's Sky, which is the only reason I mention it again here. Instead here I like to talk about slightly more detailed things that not everyone might have thought of to change the game. Starting off with the language system, I think it's clear to everyone that it's too slow to learn languages. But still, that's part of the beauty of the language system. You can be playing the game for months and still not know all of an alien's language. So I see two different solutions for the problem. One, you could simply just make all the aliens speak the same language. It wouldn't be impossible for two totally separate factions to all speak the same language. And that will also make it so all the progress you've made learning one language in one system will still apply in a system controlled by a different faction. Or the second solution would be to make the language system teach you the most common words first. That way you can pretty quickly get at least a rudimentary understanding of what an alien's trying to say, but it'll still take you quite a while to really understand exactly what they're saying. Next, going back to the issue of multiplayer. A game like this is screaming for you to play it with your friends. Intentionally disallowing players from joining each other's games and exploring alongside each other is without a doubt the worst decision they had ever made. There absolutely, for the love of all that is holy, needed to be a way to join a friend's game, have your ship and your character transport alongside them, and you can explore together, and then when you leave, your ship is transported back to where you were before. And God forbid if a feature like this let us have multi-crew ships, larger freighters that you can pile multiple players into and explore all together. Even if there weren't multi-crew ships, there's literally no reason I can think of for them to not include co-op. Especially if the game is supposedly already multiplayer and you can possibly run into other players. But if you've been keeping up with current events for the game, you've learned that that might be not entirely true. Fortunately, there is already a modding community starting to grow around the game. And they've already accomplished quite a lot even without having fully cracked the game open just yet. Maybe once they have, we'll see all these problems addressed one day. Until then, I just have to rate the game as it is. And what it is a 6 out of 10. It's decent, you'll get some enjoyment out of it. But if you're expecting the next messiah of space games, the ultimate adventure into the depths of space, boldly going where no man's gone before, you're gonna find No Man's Sky pretty shallow. And that's putting it lightly. And even if a 6 out of 10 to you seems like an adequate score to convince you to get the game, I highly recommend you tell that voice in your head to go fuck off. Because all the shit that was promised for this game and even shown in earlier builds makes No Man's Sky a giant fuck you to everyone who is excited for it. I don't know why, for some reason I held Hello Games to a higher standard than bigger companies because they're such a small developer. Something in my head was telling me, hey, they're not a big greedy company, they can do no wrong. Clearly that was a mistake. So with that game a total bust, all our hopes are now on Star Citizen to be the next greatest space game of all time. I'll see you guys in 2065 when that comes out. Till then, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.
You were the chosen one! I hate you!